for the interview on this show that we had with White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Stephen Miller. We were talking about Venezuela, but then also other territorial aspirations of the Trump administration. And Miller said, in the wake of not only the Venezuela-Maduro operation, but Trump threats to Colombia and Cuba and Mexico, that the U.S. will take Greenland. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having Greenland as a colony of Denmark? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
This afternoon, Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, who is the Republican leader of the Senate NATO Observer Group, came to the Senate floor to suggest that those advising President Trump that he should take over Greenland, that it's a good idea, should lose their jobs.
It has to start with an interview that I saw with one of the president's senior policy advisors, Stephen Miller, on CNN a couple of nights ago. You know what makes me cranky? Stupid. What makes me cranky is when people don't do their homework. What makes me cranky is when we tarnish the extraordinary execution of a mission I fully support in Venezuela by turning around and making insane comments about how it is our right to have territory owned by the Kingdom of Denmark. Folks, amateur hour is over.
Cranky or not, Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina joins us right now. So do you want Stephen Miller to lose his job?
Look, either Stephen Miller needs to get into a lane where he knows what he's talking about or get out of his job. Look, the reason why I thought it was important for me to make a comment on the floor is I've been the Republican leader of the Senate NATO Observer Group since 2018. There is no more important alliance than the NATO alliance. And Denmark has punched above its weight. It came to Afghanistan, lost 43 soldiers on the ground, fought in some of the most contested regions, honoring their Article 5 commitment to the United States.
Yeah, I think they lost more soldiers than any other country per capita.
Per capita, they did. And Jake, they were in among the NATO allies at the time. It was 30 nations. They were among the top 6. And think about all the nations bigger than them. So to have the Prime Minister suggest that they have to be prepared for some sort of action by the United States suggests to me that Mr. Miller does not know anything about the alliance, the importance of it. And, you know, generals, I was on Senate Armed Services for 8 years, and generals would always say the same thing. The only thing worse than going to war with allies is going to war without allies. This alliance is critically important. Shaking that alliance sends a signal to Putin that he's winning, and Stephen Miller doesn't represent the U.S. government. He represents the Article 2 branch, and I, as a member of the U.S. Senate, get to weigh into this issue, and I know, whether they say it out loud or not, most of my colleagues agree with me.
Well, let's talk about that. Why aren't they saying anything? You're the only Republican I know that has spoken so strongly.
Well, in this case, it's pretty straightforward. That's my role as the Republican leader of the Senate NATO Observer Group. I saw my colleague and friend Jeanne Shaheen was on earlier. She's the Democratic lead. It's very important for the NATO alliance to know that we have their back because they've had ours. We're the only country that has benefited from the Article 5 commitment in Afghanistan, where treasure